anything at all outside of herself. As a result, she was constantly bumping into others, and finally it got to the point where she could hardly breathe. So, with great effort, she went back to see the Creator. With all due respect, the blue crab sighed, contrary to what you promised, my shell has not remained the same. It keeps shrinking. Not at all, smiled the Creator. Your shell may have gotten a little thicker with age, but it has remained the same size. What's happened is that you have changed inside, beneath your shell. The Creator continued, you see, everything changes continuously. No one remains the same. That's the way I've designed things. And the wisest thing to do, little crab, is to shed your old shell as you grow, as uncomfortable as that may sometimes be. Now, you may be surprised to learn that UUCJ has just the right demographics to position it to be a catalyst for great change. While some studies found no correlation between age and level of compassion, other more recent studies have. In an article in Frontiers in Psychiatry titled Impact of Aging on Empathy, 2 out of 3 studies found that when people at various age levels viewed movies that were uplifting and movies that were distressing, older adults were more likely to engage in pro-social behavior in response to empathy-inducing films. They also found that older adults showed the greatest pro-social behavior in the form of donating to charities associated with each video, with the greatest donations in response to the distressing film. So when older adults saw something that they perceived as distressing or wrong or a problem that needed fixing, they responded in the way that they could at that moment, which was to donate to the organization that sponsored the film. Now, I know, aging often gets a bad rap. But disease, decline, and discomfort is far from the whole story. Dilip Jest, professor of psychiatry and neuroscience at UC San Diego and director of the UCSD Center for Healthy Aging, is challenging us to take another look. In conversation with Nautilus, Jest points out that some things get better with age, like the ability to make decisions, control emotions, and have compassion for others. In other words, like developing blue crabs, we get wiser with age. Jest has been doing a study of about 2,000 people from age 21 to 100 plus. He looked at their physical health, cognitive function, and psychosocial function. What he found was that physical health does decline after middle age, and cognitive function starts to dwindle a bit. But psychosocial functioning, including overall wellness, quality of life, and happiness, progressively improves with age. Older people handle stresses better than someone in their 20s and 30s. When you're young and something goes wrong, you might be crushed. You might think your world is ending. You might have a deep emotional and life diminishing psychological response. But when you're older and something goes wrong, you've had a longer track record to refer to, and you might think, well, that's okay. There are other things that will go right. You know, my life will go on. This didn't work out, something else will. This didn't work out this way, maybe it'll work out that way. Sometimes the best gifts in life or the answer no to something that we thought we wanted, but much later look back and think, wow, that was a near miss. As we age, we have more of a capacity to look back and have those realizations. Other empirical studies have shown that older people are better than younger ones in terms of control over emotion, knowing themselves better, as I said before, making better decisions that require experience, and again, having more compassion and empathy towards others. To our members who have celebrated aging by participating in, say, a croning ceremony, this wisdom that comes from a lifetime of robust experiences and lessons learned is nothing new. This growing in wisdom and compassion requires us to take our own inventory of spiritual strengths and weaknesses, our resources, and to be willing to answer the call of personal transformation. As you work through efforts to change, Ali Stark, a life coach, speaker, podcast host, and inspired entrepreneur, has identified 7 signs that a personal transformation is on its way. And the following are her words with a few references to our dear blue crab. She says, first, something feels stuck. This feeling of stuckness is something everyone can relate to at some point or another. Job isn't fulfilling, you don't know what else to do, your relationship isn't satisfying, but you're afraid to make any significant changes for fear of rejection. You feel bored or unenthusiastic, but you can't figure out how to get out of the rut. Sound familiar? Like our blue crab, it might be time for some alone time to consider how your shell is fitting. And although being alone and contemplative about such things is uncomfortable at first, it's one of the greatest gifts for acknowledging stuckness and uncovering your own truth. By having some extra space and maybe getting rid of some external stimulation, you can begin to unpack what's coming up and see how it makes you feel. Second, conflict arises in many areas of your life. Transformational change is a thorough or dramatic change in form or appearance. When we're being asked to undergo a transformation, we must let go of that which is no longer serving us in order to call in that which does. Are you having some rebellious thoughts maybe? Smart alecky, thoughts or words coming out of your mouth towards your spouse or your boss or your child or your best friend? Are you feeling a little uncomfortable in your skin? Third, you have a difficult time concentrating or getting work done. In these moments where transformation is coming upon you, you feel a little distracted. You got a to-do list, but you're having trouble ticking off each item. You're having difficulty getting through your email. Like the blue crab, our bodies are equipped to handle only so much at any given time. Same for our emotional makeup and our psychological resources. When we're being called to undergo a transformation, much of our physical energy is consumed by that process. Something bigger is happening, and although we may not be cognitively aware of what's going on, our bodies know what's up. Fourth, you're barely sleeping or you're sleeping all the time. You're having sort of extreme responses at the moment. If you're hearing the murmurs of transformation, you may experience a heightened or uncharacteristic amount of anxiety or depression. Again, these are a tendency toward the extremes as transformation is in process. Fifth, raw emotion starts to spill out of you. This is something that my daughter Lucy has observed in me as I went through the transformation from attorney to minister. It feels exactly as it sounds. In the process of transformation, you can't contain your emotions like you normally can. Remember, I said older people, as they age and mature and wisdom, begin to have more of an ability to contain their emotions. So what she noticed in me is that I would cry at the drop of a hat at a movie or a poem or a story that someone told me. Sometimes screams or moans may come out of your mouth, or you may laugh uncontrollably out of context. Because again, in a moment of transformation, you're feeling very uncomfortable and not quite in control. Sixth, you get signs from the universe. Now, transformation isn't analytical. It's natural and spiritual. It's slightly otherworldly. If you're talking about personal transformation to the way you see the world and the way you respond to it. If you're getting big signs from the universe, having new or unexplainable plant or animal encounters, or hearing messages in the wind, listen and pay attention. Some of you are rolling your eyes right now, but some of you are mystics and you know exactly what I'm talking about. They may be telling you the answers or offering you the exact type of support that you need in the moment, or there may be a synchronicity, somebody who shows up in your life that makes the change, that tells you what you need to hear, that offers the opportunity that never in a million years would you have planned for. Those are also ways that the universe could be speaking to you. Seventh, you come around through this feeling of chaos, of uncomfortableness, and eventually you feel a sense of calm and inner peace. We're constantly in a pseudo state of transformation. However, there are valleys and peaks that truly take our breath away. And when we've reached the peak of a larger transformation, everything insignificant seems to fall away. We are stripped back to our most basic animal-like selves, only tending to that which is of utmost priority. I personally am a person who has a conversation going on in the back of my brain all the time. My daughter, who is musically and artistically gifted, tells me she has a song track running in the back of her mind, and many musicians and other vocalists, artists have told me a similar thing. Well, I have chatter. It's not angry chatter. It's not telling me I'm a bad person. It's just talking about whatever's going on in my life and giving me some ideas and some suggestions and then thinking, why didn't I do that? But that's okay. And it's just kind of going on. After I've gone through one of these moments of feeling uncomfortable about where I am and who I am and how I'm responding to what's going on in the world around me, peace comes. And that chatter goes away. And a lot of the what ifs that I was racking my brain with, they just fall into place. Those that belong on the path that I'm going to be taking, they get in line. And those that have nothing to do with where I'm going next fall away as meaningless garbage. What all of us know is that changing ourselves is hard. Getting clear about how it will make a difference in our lives makes it easier. And getting clear about the many differences makes it even easier. In Harvard Business Review, Marshall Goldsmith shares his experience with personal change in an article titled, "An Exercise in Changing Yourself." When Marshall began his career as an executive educator, he challenged his clients to pick a behavior pattern for personal change that will make a big difference in their lives and to focus on that. So if we pick the right area to change and actually do so, it will almost always influence other aspects of our relationships with people. For example, more effective listening will lead to being more successful in building teamwork, having deeper relationships with our loved ones, and treating people generally with more respect. Marshall refers us to Nathaniel Branden, a psychologist and author who developed an exercise that in a few minutes we're going to do together. Before we engage in the exercise, I want to share a story Marshall shares about what happened when he used Nathaniel's exercise in one of these executive workshops that he does. Marshall says, when we began Nathan's exercise, our military friend chose "when I become less judgmental" as his behavior to change. Marshall says, I was skeptical about his sincerity and thought his participation in the exercise would be interesting to observe. True to my expectations, the first time around, he coughed and grunted a sarcastic comment rather than talk about a real benefit. The second time around, he was even more cynical. Then something changed. When he described a third potential benefit, he stopped being sarcastic. Several rounds later, he had tears in his eyes and said, "When I become less judgmental, maybe my children will speak to me again." Marshall continues, since that day, I have conducted this exercise with several thousand people. Many start with benefits that are corporately correct, such as, this change will help my company make more money, and finally ends with benefits that are more human, such as, this change will make me a better person. Marshall says, I will never forget one hard-driving executive who chose, when I get better at letting go, as the behavior he should work on. His first benefit was that his direct reports would take more responsibility. There's that corporate thing, because these are executives at a corporate workshop. His final benefit was that when I get better at letting things go, I will probably live to celebrate my 60th birthday. So now, I'm inviting you to take a moment to engage in this spiritual practice. We'll begin the practice here, and I invite you to complete it at home. The exercise invites us to get in touch with those deeper differences. It's straightforward but not easy, and here are the steps. Yes, okay. First, identify a behavioral pattern or trait you want to change. And then secondly, with the change in mind, complete this sentence. I want to become less or more something. Third, then with your desired change in mind, complete another sentence that gets at the benefit your change will make. When I become more or less blank, I will blank. Now, I invite you to do that here and now. And for those of you who are rebelling and refusing to participate, it's going to be a quiet 3 or 4 minutes. Now comes the challenging and important part. Complete that benefit sentence another 6 to 8 times. In the workshops, people are put in groups up to 8 people, and each round people share what they have added to. So you might do this with a group of friends, you might do it in your chalice circle, you might do it with your family, and see how your understanding of the benefit of working on some behavior or some characteristic will have for you. Push yourself to identify numerous other benefits and take your time with it. You may be able to do it in one setting, but more likely than not, this will be something, if you do it alone, that you need to set aside and return to multiple times. If you do it in a group, maybe at Thanksgiving, just make sure that everybody is well fed, happy, non-anxious when they're doing it, and give yourself some time to just explore this notion. I bet you'll get some feedback from family about how well you are or have been doing in the area that you have chosen. The goal of this exercise is to take you deeper and uncover the deeper need or hunger that's driving your desire to change. Okay, so let's go back to the way we began with this message today, talking about compassion and beloved community. When we work on ourselves, when we work on various aspects of our personality that we know we can improve, we not only get the benefits of that improvement and that focus, but we also have a little more compassion. Because as we understand ourselves to be works in progress, then we can have the grace to understand others likewise, to be a little more open to negotiation, to forgiveness, to understanding that even if someone is coming at you with the most opposite set of values that you can imagine in their statements, you might be willing to see if there isn't a commonality of purpose or need underneath it all. We are the building blocks for compassionate community. We are the building blocks for beloved community. And I just want to highlight one program here at UUCJ that I think probably got an awful lot of focus when it was first started, but maybe post-COVID has sort of fallen out of people's awareness. And that's the Neighborhood Accountability Board. I was invited to participate in one of their sessions and found it absolutely fascinating and heartwarming and inspiring. The Neighborhood Accountability Board is an alternative way of addressing behavior primarily among young adults who get into trouble for the first time with the law. They can come, if they choose to come here, it's held downstairs, it's not run by us, but we should participate because it isn't neighborhood accountability if the neighbors aren't participating. It's designed to have lay people come and hear what a young person has done, and then hear from family members and friends, well, what are the circumstances that were around that event? You know, what might have been the trigger for this undesirable behavior, if you will. And then after having heard that, the group goes to work trying to create a path of accountability, restitution, things that the young adult can do to prove that they have given thought to what they've done, that they have investigated alternatives that they could have pursued, and that they are genuinely contrite about the harm that they have done. And if possible, how they can pay back or repair and somehow offer restitution for any damage or harm that they have done. What an awesome program. I see 3 and 4 young people every month when they come to meet here. And I think how lucky they are, because many of them are youth of color, not all, but many of them are, for whom run-in with the law could become just one thing after another, after another, after another. And if they participate in this program, then it stops that. And they don't go through the rest of the system. They are accountable, they report back, and they get a do-over. And hopefully the requirements are sufficient to make them think twice about engaging in that sort of behavior ever again. So that's what I mean. I understand this congregation members, and I think I care maybe, Lois is telling me yes, worked together very hard to get this program going. So that's what I mean by this congregation, with its skewing a little older, a little wiser, a little more compassionate than the general population may be, is perfectly situated to make grand, positive changes in the world. So please embrace that about yourselves. And I suspect that you can speak to Lois or to Tessie. Tessie's the one who got me to go. So Tessie Bond is also very involved, as I know some others of you are, but we could always use more neighbors because, as I said, it doesn't work if there aren't neighbors to be accountable to in the process. So I personally want to just end this portion of the service with a big thank you. In my letter from the minister this month, I named quite a few of the social justice and community service organizations that this congregation supports. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being the wise human beings that you are, and for being willing to make a difference in the world.